For the most updated version of the Glyphs RPG blueprint, tokens, accessories and resources, please visit www.glyphsrpg.com. Also visit 2ddice.com for our internationally popular D20 RPG coins and our other masterful coin works.
This is Charlie Smith, and now we're going to be getting into Chapter 10, which explains the attributes that we use in Glyphs and how we break them down and by orders, I guess you could say. So before we delve into the individual attributes themselves, that's not that important so much as explaining how they are broken down and distinguished, I guess you could say. So here, let's talk real quick about prime versus expressive attributes, okay? So a prime attribute is basically a benchmark type attribute, I guess you could say, that separates one being's potential from another being's potential, okay? Now, expressive attributes, basically they further define a creature's qualities, but they're not necessarily, they don't necessarily act as benchmarks against other creatures, okay? So in Glyphs, okay, that's one thing to consider. The other are how they're divided into three categories, okay? So here we have physique, intelligence, and essence, okay? Or I guess you could say mind, body, spirit, if you will, okay? The same concept we're working with. Now each of those has 5 attributes within, so it comes out to a total of 15 attributes that we look at here. Now, it may seem like a lot of attributes to track, but in reality, I have found it adds to a more dynamic experience by having that amount of attributes, and which also generate quite a nice set of modifiers as well, 11 to be exact. So the more we have on the table here, the more we can work with and create a truly flexible and experience, okay? So let's take a look here. Now for prime attributes, like I mentioned, they do function as benchmarks. The ones that I came up with that I found made the most sense to look at for each category here are strength and constitution. Those would cover the physique category. Then for intelligence, you have IQ and reaction as your prime attributes. And then for essence or spirit, you have force and wisdom. So those are your 6 prime or benchmark attributes, okay? Can be looked at in 4 different orders here, okay? So that's what's really neat about prime attributes, unlike expressive attributes, okay? Prime attributes, we have 4 different groups here, or orders, and they each belong to a certain type of being. Now, it's not set in stone. You can set them however you want to, but this will give you an idea of how they're allocated. So wild attributes, or W, attributes like that in animals or more bestial type creatures, more base instinct type creatures, okay? Even attributes, okay, even prime attributes belong to more advanced beings, more playable race types. A lot of the playable race types will have human attributes, humans, a lot of NPC nature, okay? Then we have the third class, the third order, are the augmented attributes. So any creature that's basically been enhanced somehow, so cyborgs, robots, or even through magical means, those are the types of beings that can have augmented attributes, prime attributes. Now finally, the 4th kind we have here is the rarest and most powerful, which are epic prime attributes, okay? So that you'll see in gods, demons, angels, vampires, things that are more divine or supernatural in nature will have those kind of attributes. So those are the most powerful. But more often than not, you're going to be using the even attributes a lot, or wild when you're creating creatures, okay? So here on page 184, you can see what I mean as far as how the attributes are broken down in a more visual manner. So first we have physique, intelligence, and essence, okay? Those are the 3 categories. So, body, mind, spirit, if that's how you want to look at it. And under each one, we have the 2 prime attributes belonging to each, which is a total of 6. So strength and constitution for physique, intelligence would be IQ and reaction, and essence would be the force and wisdom attributes. Now, since those are the prime attributes, okay, those are ranked with multipliers, okay, based on the category they belong to. So as an example, the average human would have even physique multipliers, okay? They get a multiplier of 1, okay? For intelligence, though, guess what? The average human has even, okay, but they get a multiplier of 2, okay, and so forth. So take a look. Be familiar with this chart here. The good news is I've already done a lot of the work for you in creating the default race types that are playable, but that's going to really come into play when you're creating monsters and creatures and NPCs of your own. This is something you want to refer to, okay? So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at how this plays out. So as an example, in Glyphs, okay, of the 15 attributes, when you're creating a new character, which I'll show you in the characters chapter, you have a certain number of points to distribute amongst the 15 attributes, okay, when you're creating a new character. So the weakest being 0, which not recommended, obviously. So let's look at 1 through 4, okay, 1 being weak or dumb or however, whatever metric you're looking at, and 4 being the strongest, the wisest, the most attuned. That's the example of the scale that we use. So 1 to 4 is what we use. Now let's look at strength as an example for a human. So a human would get the times 1 multiplier, right? So if I got a 2 strength, that really means a 2 strength here. But because humans have an even intelligence, a reaction, okay, IQ and reaction here, guess what? That average number 2 here for IQ or reaction becomes a 4 here. So, and same thing here for essence here. So human, let's give him a 3 in wisdom, okay, or force. Suddenly, because it's even, it becomes 9. So I'm pointing that out to make you aware that when you're creating your character or creating a new monster, factor in the prime attribute multipliers, which, like I said, on your character sheets, that's already been done for you. Just make sure that you're aware of it when you're creating your character. So as you're going to learn by playing Glyphs long enough, that attributes serve a very specific purpose. So I went with 15 of them, and the reason is I want to describe a number of different scenarios. I want all my characters to be able to react and engage with different scenarios, I guess you could say. So they have a very specific purpose besides just modeling your character, okay? So the way we use them is through attribute challenge. Now, attributes and modifiers alike, potential based on physical, mental, or spiritual prowess, okay? So attributes define the limitations and strengths inherent in every being, okay? So attribute challenges basically encourage fluid gameplay and allow more freedom of interpretation, okay? Now, the architect can use 3 different types of attribute challenges, okay, depending on the situation and how they want to how they want to challenge the character and how they want the gameplay to flow, okay? So we have character versus character, character versus potential, and character versus chance, okay? So those are the 3 main ways we can use attributes as far as challenges go, okay? So first we have character versus potential. So basically, this is the quickest way to get the challenge over with. Basically, the architect simply references the character's attribute score and determines, based on their knowledge of the attribute level, if such character can do the challenges or not. Okay, right off the bat. So very quick and straightforward. Okay, so let's see. So in this example, if the strength level is 0, which is pathetic, okay, the character collapses into exhaustion immediately after doing 3 push-ups. So that's an example of that. Okay, if the character's strength level is 1, okay, he's weak, but not as bad as 0, so he's still weak though. So in that example, it took a lot of effort and time for the character to do 10 push-ups, but they were all done, believe it or not, okay? So perhaps the drill sergeant's motivations helped out a little bit there, but nevertheless, still a weak character, okay? Finally, let's say the strength level was 2, so somebody with average strength, okay? So the character completes 10 push-ups,
but trying to do 10 more might be a little bit of a chore. They might be able to do it. So those are ways you can interpret the challenge simply based on looking at the numbers, okay? Next, we have character versus chance. Now, honestly, it's going to be the most common form of attribute challenge you're going to use any one of the 15 attributes and the modifiers with. One of my personal favorites. Now, I do want to note something real quick. Now, I am known from time to time to make slight updates to the Glyphs RPG blueprint based on player feedback and my own observations to basically streamline gameplay a little bit more, okay, in a very subtle way, by providing a lot of optional rules and adjustments, okay? So make sure you're using the most current version of the blueprint. On the website, you'll see the date that the blueprint's updated so nobody can miss out on anything. Okay, the reason I'm doing that is because I just recently updated, based on the time this video was done, I added an optional rule you can use here, and something very handy, by the way, for character versus chance challenges, okay? So basically that approach randomizes the attribute challenge, so that's a pretty nice way to play and change things up a little bit. So that's very favorable for architects who prefer to, like I said, randomize the challenge's outcome instead of just saying it off the bat based on the number. Okay? So in this case, the player or the subject's opponent is simply the element of chance. Okay? So in this type of challenge, the traveler or the character and the architect both spend the token once and interpret the digits 0 through 9 as a percentile. Okay? Okay, and the value of the character's attribute or modifier score in question is simply added in. Okay, so the architect spins 0 through 9. Okay, 0 means 10, obviously, in this case. And the player character spins the token and adds in their specific attribute score. Now, the one with the highest number wins the challenge. That's basically all that means. Very simple. Now, recently, like I said, in order to spice things up a little bit and make things a little more interesting, I added an optional section here, okay, which says that architects has the option to factor in additional difficulty ranks into their token spins. So whereas normally the architect simply spins the token and has the digits up to 10, okay, the architect has the ability to add in extra scores here based on the challenge's difficulty. Okay, I found that to be better, just with personal experience. You don't have to use them. Depends how simple you want to keep things, but they are there. So, as an example, let's say I spin, and I'm the architect, and I spin the token, and I land a 5, right? Well, let's say the character, and actually we just had this happen. We had a feral character, a lion feral character, one of the best characters in the campaign, and he was locked up in a prison cell trying to escape a very sturdy set of handcuffs. Well, attribute challenge says you just spin the token and then he spins and then adds in his strength. Well, the odds were in his favor. Well, again, in a normal setting, I guess you could get away with that, but I want to be able to spice things up a little bit, you know, based on, in this example, the sturdiness of the handcuff, let's just say. So for me to do that, I had to add these in here, the difficulties, which again, refer to the skills page, the skills chapter on page 157 to give you an idea of how the difficulties can play out. So in this case, in this example, I rolled a 5, right? I spun a 5 on my digits, but those are pretty tough cuffs that he was trying to break out of. So let's give that a difficulty of worthy or plus 30%, so I would add 3 to my score. So 5 suddenly becomes 8. So that levels the playing field for me a little bit as an architect. And like I said, makes the challenges a little bit more serious. So just want to point that out real quick. Very simple thing to do. Just read through it, get familiar with it. Finally, we have character versus character. Okay, that's the third type of attribute challenge. Again, very straightforward. Okay, all it means is two characters or character versus monster. Okay, they both spend the token and interpret the digits, like I said, 1 through 10, or 0 through 9 is 10, okay? And simply add in the respective attribute score together, and the one with the highest score wins. It's that simple. So, let's say characters that are arm wrestling, okay? So the first character, he's got a strength level 2, okay? And the token spin is 7, and but he adds in his strength score, it becomes 9. Okay? Second character has a strength level 3, and the token spin is 5, and you add that together, it comes 8. So, in that particular example, character 1 barely wins the arm wrestling match. So, again, that's all I have to say about attribute challenges. Just have fun and experiment with different scenarios. You're going to find quite often you're going to be using these types of challenges, in some cases maybe more than skill set challenges, interesting enough, I found. So have fun, and shoot me an email at any time and let me know what you think.
So now I'm going to quickly skim over the 15 attributes that we look at here. I definitely take your time, especially as an architect, to read through them and be familiar with them. But I'm just going to skim through, okay, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here as far as attributes go. So page 186, we start with a physique category, okay, and the first two that are always listed are the prime attributes for each category, and then you'll have the other expressive ones. So as an example, strength is listed here, and the different benchmarks here for prime. So as you'll see here, as an example, we have the even numbers here, so a lot of race types are going to be falling here, and here we have the different attribute orders that already factor in the multiplier for the score. So let's say if your character is augmented and would normally have a level 2 strength, suddenly he has a number 6 in strength for the attribute. So that's something to keep in mind here when you're looking at the prime attributes. Okay, they all have that factored in to save you time. Okay, so same thing here, constitution. Then we get into finesse, appearance, and health. Okay, so those are the 5 attributes for physique. Okay, same thing here. Now we're getting into the intelligence attributes. Okay, broken down the same way as far as prime orders. So we have IQ, we have reaction, and then expressives, we've got memory, focus, and sanity. Okay, so take a look through those, be familiar with them. Okay, as a player too, by the way, especially that when you know how to make a check in a certain situation, definitely comes in handy. Okay, and then finally, the third category, we have essence or spirit, I guess you could say. We're looking at force, wisdom, and then we have luck, will, and charisma. So take a good look at those, be familiar with them, and know how to use them. All right, so page 195, really simple, just gives you some examples of some attribute challenges. These are not the only ones, obviously. These are just some overall general situations that you might use these in, okay? But as you play and run games, if you're GMing, you're going to find there's a lot more applications, but these are just some general ones that I came up with. So that's pretty much it on the general attributes. So now we're going to go and talk about the 4 senses that we're going to use real quick. Take a look here real quick at the 4 senses that we're going to be using in the Glyphs RPG blueprint. I know there's 5 senses, or even more if you want to get really technical, I guess you could say, but in this game we use 4 senses, okay, that we manage, okay, and that is done to simulate a more immersive experience. Okay, so we're going to be using sight, hearing, smell, and taste, and they're measured by levels of condition, okay, somewhat like attributes. Okay, so the 4 senses that we're measuring respond to different intensities of direct stimuli, which we will be detailing in the environment chapter. Okay, so stimuli and senses go hand in hand, and they do function somewhat like attributes. Okay, so take a look here. We have sight, we have hearing, smell, and taste. So just look through those real quick. There's different levels of each, which, you know, give you an idea of what your character can or can't perceive, or any challenges they may have. So as an example, for sight, you know, level 0 means you're totally blind. Level 1 means your vision's impaired, but you know, you can see okay if corrective surgery is done, or you have glasses or whatever. Okay, level 2 is pretty standard for anything. Okay, that means you have regular vision in this case, or you're normal. Okay, I guess you could say. Level 3, in any sense, is above and beyond. Okay, in this case, for sight, your eyes can pick up the most subtle detail and crystal clarity. So different races will have a combination of sense ranks. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so each race type, if you notice, has the senses marked with little bubbles from 1 to 3. So that's what these mean here. Okay, so now let's move on to attribute modifiers, one of my favorite parts. So what are attribute modifiers? Okay, so all modifiers are real-time combinations of two attributes that are used in combat, social, or other special circumstances, okay? So attributes are numerical representations of a subject's performance, potential, or perception by others in some cases, okay? So the value of a modifier is simply obtained by adding two attributes together and dividing the result by 2, yielding an average, okay? Now, with attribute modifiers, the value is rounded up to the next whole number unless the architect feels otherwise, and they need to let their players know in advance. But by the book, you average two numbers together and round it up. Now, I have already done that for you here to show you how to generate each attribute that we look at. So we have initiative, speed, impact, evade, parry, endurance. We have block, hit, impression, fate, and power. Okay, so for each of those attributes, here take a look at how I came up with those. Okay, so as an example, the initiative score is going to equal your character's or monster's finesse and reaction attribute, and then you're going to divide that number by 2. So that's how we come up with these attribute modifiers. Okay, so in some cases, I guess you could treat them like attributes for challenge purposes, but you're going to see these a lot, mostly during combat encounters, okay? Initiative, speed, impact, evade, parrying, endurance, okay? Things of that nature. Now, endurance is one of those that I want to show you real quick, okay? That's one that I put in there for more realism, I guess you could say, or for players who abuse their powers and a GM needs a tool to help challenge them a little bit more. That is an optional modifier. Okay, so it's there. Take a look at it. Okay, blocks, pretty standard combat stuff. Hit. Okay, now here we get 3 unusual ones here. We have impression, fate. It basically functions as a booster to for social interaction. So it boosts your overall physical impression that you're making on an NPC. Okay, so that can come in handy in a social encounter. Fate is used really in matters of life and death. So it's like a saving throw against death, I guess you could say. So if the character would otherwise die in combat, that's one modifier that can be used. Okay, sparingly, but it's there. Okay, power modifier. So that basically lets you know how powerful another magic wielding creature is. And it also functions sort of like an etheric shield, and we'll learn about that in the ether chapter here shortly. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So like, have fun and just see how these attributes and modifiers fit together. And we'll see you in the next chapter.